LML.
We aren't called University South Bay.
It's called LML.
Andre LML. This comes or something.
LML.
He's cool. I've trained with him a bunch of times. All right. Let's go, guys. You want to do this?
Okay, let's do it.
All right. We're back with another show.
Back again.
Back again.
Tobin's back.
Melissa's back. Chris is back. We're back.
Okay.
We got the CEO.
What's
In
up?
the house.
What's up, all my lovers?
What's up?
All my lovers.
What's up, CEO?
All my supporters.
You
and
get
lovers.
so much praise in the comment section. It's
Certainly
amazing.
do.
Oh, the black belt.
I'm super sick.
Femme fatale.
Super sick and slick. You
Nice.
Oscar Myers.
You Oscar Mayer. We're here with the venerable Chris
OG
Haueter,
Chris Haueter, old grappler.
the OG.
The Oscar Mayer.
Oscar Mayer. There's two Oscar Myers and a femme fatale.
That's right. I got you all in check.
All right, I'm the producer, Tobin. What up?
What up, Tobes?
We're here to do another show, another podcast. We're short a crew member again, but it's all good. We're moving on. Today we got a topic we want to dovetail off of last week. We talked about staying motivated with our New Year's resolutions for Jiu Jitsu, maybe or maybe not. But it's kind of like to be motivated in anything. The most important thing is having purpose, right? What is the point of all this? Why are we doing this?
That
What
is
the
a
hell
good
does
one.
it matter?
Yeah,
What's going on?
I think there are some things in life that we seemingly intuitively know the purpose of. Like example, a job. We understand that we do a job to get money so we could live and buy shit. But then when it comes to things like hobbies, we're doing it because we enjoy it. And when it comes to something like the jiu-jitsu, you're often challenged because when you're new, you're gonna suck at it unless you've had prior wrestling or judo. You start out and you generally suck. The old adage that there's the hammer and the nail, and when you begin, and sometimes for months and even years at a time, you're the nail and everyone else is the hammer. It feels good when you finally get to be the hammer, not the nail. And what is the point of this? And I think that almost all white belts ask themselves, and almost all aging black belts ask themselves at least once, for me, like once a week sometimes, like, why do I do this? Why do I? Like, even when I'm not hurt, I'll like wonder, why do I do this? Like, what is it? And the answer I used for almost 20 years when I was like a brown belt to fourth degree black belt is I do it because I cannot not do it. Because when I don't do it, something doesn't feel right in life. I feel the missing hole that sometimes I can't even put my finger on it, that suddenly when I'm back on the mat after a good roll, I go, oh, that's why again. And for me, it's the closest I get to what meditation people call stillness. Even though I'm moving around, most of my mind is still and in a very nirvanic state. So that's my answer why I do it.
I would like to add to that. For me, I think when I have a really good training session and my body feels really good and there's really cool people in the room, I'm in an environment that I love, it's almost a state of euphoria.
Yes.
To like post training, I feel like I might act a little goofy and say stupid things and joke around with everybody because I'm feeling like so good and it's a natural high, and I don't drink alcohol or do drugs, so maybe there's a little bit of like, it's like a natural like release, and
Yes, that's
just so
true.
many different, I feel like hormones, chemicals in the body are being released through doing an activity like jiu-jitsu where you have physical contact.
Yep.
You have endorphins, you have adrenaline, and then also you have the absence of thought in your mind once you get to a point where you've been doing this long enough and your body's just moving and responding, as opposed to like thinking and planning and strategizing. You can really be in the now moment, and it's a
Yep.
meditative experience. So on so many different levels, you get that wonderful feeling, and I think that can keep me wanting to come back. And being now in a little state where I'm having to take a break because of some injuries, I think that that's definitely something that I'm noticing maybe was like a solution to some of my underlying anxiety, to have that reprieve from
Yeah.
the day to day. And I don't have anything that quite does it to that level, anything else in my life that quite gets me that, just feeling that good. So
And
that's one part of it, purpose.
In a very the Taoist view, you internally connect with yourself and you externally connect with others, and that seems to be a balance that's hard to achieve in other activities that we do.
But then once we get into this role of being instructors, like when I have a planned class or lesson or private lesson or seminar, then there's that purpose of showing up for those students. And for a long time in this space, I held little classes 2 days a week where sometimes I would have one person or no people would come, or 3 people or 5 or 7, however many people would show up. I knew I was showing up for them. So that got me into that position and helped me refine like my ability to teach and to lead a group. And it was more about that than like, it wasn't about like collecting money per se. It was more about just developing as an instructor and having people who I was helping to coach. And I don't do that anymore because now I'm all about the Benjamins. Just kidding.
The CEO. The CEO is all about the
CEO
Benjamins.
is in the house.
What's your purpose, Tobin?
Oh, geez. Maybe I'm coming up with this show because I am asking that myself. I definitely ask myself often, why am I doing this? I got all this other stuff going on. I got big responsibilities with kids and family and
You're here on the
work
podcast.
stuff. Yeah. Like, sometimes it's like, why am I showing up to wrestle dudes and women? It seems
Dudes and
like
women.
dudes and women. I can't exclude the women, right? Why am I wrestling people in my little bit of spare time that I have? And I think for me, it's all that same stuff. I think it's a practice that clears your mind in a way that nothing else that I've ever done before does. I think when someone's actively trying to get you to say uncle, that puts
Squeezing
you
on your neck, bending your joints the way they're not supposed to go.
Yeah,
I like that part.
that puts you in a spot where I think your mind clears for sure. So it's that. It's fulfilling the social component where I get a little bit of social time. Most of my life is spent on the computer, on the phone, with my kids, and that's pretty much it. That's what I basically am doing. Driving, talking on the phone, working on a computer, hanging out with my kids. That's how my time is. And then I get to socialize a little bit with other people in the training. So it's that. It's the exercise component too. This is like most of my exercise. I need to adjust that because this is like all my exercise is just training. And so it ticks a lot of boxes in a 1 hour session.
Yeah.
So it's the
does.
efficiency factor of getting all that at once is what ends up motivating me. And I think that's what I usually come to when I try to say what my purpose is I'm doing all that. And then there's the utilitarian aspect where I feel like I'm doing all that, getting my exercise, getting my socialization, getting my mind clear, getting my body clear from the exercise. And then I'm doing a skill that will help me. It's a utilitarian skill.
Yes.
Right?
A skill that potentially could save your or someone else's life.
Or get you in trouble.
Or get you in trouble.
I mean, I was just talking about, today with my physical therapist, how, you think you're going to go save somebody, then they pull a knife on you and they kill you.
Yes.
And this we know has happened.
We know a guy who used to come here a lot and he was murdered.
So it is something, we can't be so cocky about, we do jujitsu, we're black belts, that we end up getting killed, you know. I mean, the first step is always call 911, I think.
Yes.
Just like from a strategy perspective, if you see someone being assaulted.
I remember ages ago, Hickson told me, it's like that he has less interest in street altercations because of jiu-jitsu, not more interest. He has less, because you realize how uncontrolled it is and how easily you could get shot or stabbed, or you beat the guy up and they want revenge, and then you're looking over your shoulder for 5 years. So it's kind of a...
Well, in Chris, you often talk about how like the white belt male oftentimes comes, their purpose is to learn how to defend themselves.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, I'm just thinking about how that changes over time. That was not really, I think for me, I was just feisty and I wanted to like get in here and be physical.
You like the outlet, right?
It was
off
the
bat.
outlet,
Yep.
as opposed to me thinking that I was going to have to defend myself in some situation, which is kind of odd because like as a female young person who would drink a lot, you would think I was put in these situations where I certainly could have used a little bit of self-defense, but that was never my thought. My thought was more like, I just need to get this like angst inside of me out, and like trying to hurt other people in a controlled way where they get to tap so they're not really hurt feels good.
Yeah, that's it. It's a cathartic thing where it really does seem to soothe so many aspects of our life. And because I like things in threes all the time, I always think mind, a body, and spirit. And they seem to be, when I've had a training session, or even in the midst of a good roll, those feel perfectly in tune, in a balance, where it's an isosceles triangle.
An isosceles triangle has two sides.
Which one's perfectly balanced? Equilateral triangle. Yes.
No wonder our son can't learn these
God,
terms.
I forgot, and I did take geometry and trigonometry, but I forgot.
Well, most people probably don't know that. Yeah. Just saying. So it's okay if you don't know
Yeah.
that. But the other thing is, like, as we progress, I think, and we start to learn some things, one of the things that I think that wasn't healthy, that I was trapped in, was that if I don't show up, I'm going to not learn and I'm going to not progress in my skills. So that became part of like this unhealthy ego addiction where I wanted to keep getting better. So then my purpose was train absolutely as much as you can so you can try to get better, so you can do better against other people, maybe win in the competition scene, and these types of things.
Which, when you're in that mode, you're definitely not in the now. You're living in the...
That was like a
past or the
really
future.
anxiety producing phase of my, like I had a lot of anxiety around jiu-jitsu.
I definitely had a
like,
period of that.
Cram as much as you can into it so that you can, and maybe it was a necessary phase because doing all that did help me to get better. Otherwise, maybe I would have just said, oh, this is too hard, I'm out, because I'm never going to get better at this training 2 days a week for an hour. Like, that's not how you, I mean, you did that too, right? You went all in to gain skills. You don't get good by training 2 hours a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like there's some sort of common arc that people take where they kind of start either thinking, oh, I'm going to be this tough fighter, I want to learn how to fight, or, oh, I want to do something like, I mean, you essentially, in a way, are saying you want to learn how to fight, right? And you want to fight people. And that's kind of seems like the attraction initially, but there's like this arc that people go through where that's kind of what really drives their progress in the beginning. And then they maybe get into compete. Like, I never wanted to compete, but as soon as I started, it seemed like the natural thing, and then compete a bunch, and then
let's see if it actually works. You got to test it. Yep.
Go through that, and then it kind of ends up being a part of your life, and then it ends up being like a spiritual thing or a total utilitarian activity, and it changes. It seems like it's okay that it changes.
But competing is like one of those things. I mean, when you're club rolling, it's in essence a competition. But there is something that happens when it's somehow an official competition, whether it's Chuck's Backyard Grapple Off, IBJ, JF, MMA, whatever it is, that you have way less control than you do when you're club rolling, where, okay, guys, everybody grab a body, we'll put the timer on. Like, that's a fairly controlled competition. But when, like, that in a month from now, I'm going to compete on this day. I don't even know the exact time. I don't even know exactly who I'm up against. That is like, I think, a very good experience to learn how to let go of control. And people that don't do that, I think, are missing something that I'm not going to say it's necessary, but if you are after personal growth, I think it is a key to have competed.
I'd agree with that. I think so. Yeah. What about that? I think the big question that people have is like, I think non-martial arts people look from the outside at this and they go like, oh, that doesn't work, or that's
Yeah.
not real, or something like that. And there is a part of the purpose and understanding that this is a fighting skill that you could use. But the more I think about it, I mean, so for me, one of my life goals is my wife and I want to move onto our boat at some point and like sail around the world, not like to circuit, not with the goal of going around the world. I mean,
Right.
maybe that eventually will
Go
happen.
all over the world.
Go
Yeah.
all over the world, and
That's awesome.
maybe
We'll
go.
miss you.
It's not anytime
We'll
soon.
join you.
Being old
Yeah, you're welcome.
and
Yeah,
done.
and you know, like you were talking about piracy when we were talking about my old sailing experiences.
Mhm.
Like I definitely feel like when you travel, there is always that threat of a physical altercation, or you feel a stronger threat of a physical altercation.
Yeah.
It's
And,
because it's unknown, I think.
It's
though.
Because it's
unknown.
Like,
unknown.
it's an unknown territory. You can't predict it as well, so there is more fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Traveling.
And so I'd like to feel confident that I
Mhm.
could, you know, handle a real life situation. And that's actually that's a historical component of sailing, actually. Like sailors back in the day used to train jiu-jitsu and judo.
What about
I would see
Savat?
it, yeah.
Isn't that the sailing
And
thing with the boots?
Savat too.
Yep. It's a French pirate art. It's been called.
Captain James, I think James Irving is his name. He's a famous boat captain. They have one of those like historical boats at the LA harbor is named after him. Captain Irving Johnson, sorry. Captain Irving Johnson. They have a boat down there, like one of those historical boats at the harbor you can go day sail on.
Oh, that's
It's
cool.
called the Irving Johnson.
Yeah.
He, like in, I want to say like 1920 maybe, was a young man that got on a ship in Germany, a cargo ship, and did a voyage as a crew member around Cape Horn, so across the Atlantic Ocean,
right.
and then around Cape Horn, then
Cape Horn's gnarly.
up South America. And he brought a little camera, like a little camera, and like filmed a bunch of
Old
the
school film,
voyage.
Yeah.
It's the most insane video you'll ever see. It's available some
Wow.
places. I have a copy of it. It's insane. These guys are so gnarly. They're like climbing up the edges of sails like this. They'll pinch it like this, and they'll go and climb up like hundreds of feet in the air with no safety equipment. And they're just hanging all over these boats like crazy, and in big storms going up the mast. And then he brought his little camera and filmed from up the
And he
mast
filmed that?
of like the
Wow.
waves washing over the deck. And in that video, he talks about training jiu-jitsu and judo, because like there'd be
You
scuffles
get
on
your
the boat.
base, your
On a
balance,
Well-
confidence.
While you're rolling at sea.
More than that, he was like, you know, it was a gnarly environment on the boat, like all these
bet.
dudes trapped on the boat. And he
Yeah.
was like, you got to be able to fight and
And
handle
there's
yourself.
altercations between the crew members. Yeah.
And so he said he trained so that he could hold it
he could
down
hold
when
his
he's
own,
on the
yeah.
boat. And so that's a thought, right? Like I have those thoughts. I'm not like 1,000% sure how that would actually like play out, you know. But I heard a piracy story recently where a guy and a gal were like sailing in the Caribbean, and some pirates like zipped up to their boat and like tied off, and one guy jumped on the boat, and the dude was like gnarly enough that he was able to grab the guy and like throw him off the boat. And then another guy got on with a gun, and he like grabbed the gun and like was able to throw it in the water and then throw the second guy off the boat
Jeez,
and
that's
untie their boat.
gnarly, yeah.
And I'm like, man, how's that going to play out? You know, am I going to pull guard
Yeah.
and
Right, exactly.
do a cool sweep on these guys, or what's going to go on?
Well, and
So we're going to do karate now. That's what's
you know, that's like the whole other aspect of this. I think most of us, especially as guys, as kids, we would like, for me, it was watching the Kung Fu movies, reading the Black Belt magazine, and you like see turn your body into a weapon. There's something really appealing to young boy kids to turn your body into a weapon. I mean, I like watching how my son plays with the sticks and knives and all that. There's something about wanting to be the weapon rather than having to physically have one. And I have guns and I've done all weapons arts and all that, but I find people that don't do martial arts and are really into weapons, I'm going to say, i.e., guns most time, they have an insecurity that I don't feel that people have who do martial arts and guns or knives and sticks, right? It's that the closest range is grappling. The next range is punching, kicking, and throwing, right? And then it becomes weapons range. And by avoiding that closest thing, you're missing out and thinking, can I draw him fast before he grabs me? Like all that. It just gives you a different, not only competency, but a feeling of security with your weapon because you can grapple, where grapplers feel insecure about retaining their weapon.
And I think a lot of people probably don't do jujitsu because they have insecurity about physical closeness with
Right.
other human beings. And I know people that have tried it and it gives them a trauma response,
Yeah.
or men that just look at it like, I'm not doing that.
Right.
I'm not going to be that close to some other man.
Yeah. That's too
So
gnarly. I'd
that-
lose my
that
temper
is
if someone did that to
an
me.
insecurity, though,
Yeah,
right?
I think so.
I'd see red. I'd see red. And it'd
The
be
only
all
way
over.
I fight is for real. I'm gonna tear your throat out.
I'll
and
just
that
pull
shit's
my
not
gun
gonna
out.
work out. Yeah, I think
Wrestling.
and it is kind of like I think for all of us, or a lot of us, including me, we go down when we say street art and sport. A lot of us have gone down the street self-defense rabbit hole. And for me, maybe because I have my balance, is I find each one of those things, doing just art part, you end up with Aikido. During just the street part, you end up with groin kicks, and I got to have a gun. Just the sport part, you miss out on that internal intent and the growth that comes from not worrying about having to win. And I just think that keeping that balance, at least for me, has been key into not falling into deeper insecurity or a paranoia, and not falling into a false confidence that comes with the art only. By sport, you're humbled in a way that the other two, you can't have that. And I encourage balance.
And I'm also not saying that grapplers don't have plenty of insecurities.
Sure.
Because just like a person might be insecure about being physically close, well, maybe they're really good at communicating with people, and making friendships in that way. And I find maybe a lot of us, not all of us, but some of us, myself included, struggle in social situations. But you come in here and everybody's just wrestling. So it just brings everybody together.
Yes.
And you form closer bonds with people because you're doing this thing so close to each other.
Yes.
Whereas it might be harder for me and some others to communicate with people out there in normal land.
Yeah, it's
and this is another language of communication.
Yes. And if you're on some spectrum, it's pretty common that grapplers are on some spectrum, and it's a place where that part of the social interaction is not even necessary when you're even rehearsing the moves or drilling. It's just, you don't need it. You have your contact, your communication, and bam.
Yeah, it seems like a very holistically good thing that provides a lot of different dynamic value to people's lives.
When used in moderation, Tobin.
Yes.
Because that's the one thing that when you start to get into that excessive mentality and the trap, and maybe you have to go, we all have to go through periods like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's when it's not as holistic, and when for myself, I feel like I've done the most damage to my body physically. Not everybody had that outcome, but I did, and I feel like you know, people will say like the things we did in our 30s come back to haunt us in our 40s and 50s.
Yes.
And that's like what I'm feeling right now. And it's not fun. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I
Definitely.
there was a clip going around on the internet of Joe Rogan. He's on doing his podcast with this really great comedian named Eric Griffin. And Eric Griffin isn't a martial arts guy, and he asked Joe Rogan, like, what's the point of jiu-jitsu? And then Joe Rogan's like, well, if we were in a fight, I would kill you. And I like, you know, that's somebody connecting with the utilitarian version,
Yes.
but there's so much more to offer.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's so much more. And also, like, I think it makes so much sense to diversify your purpose by bouncing around in the street art sport triangle. Because, like we've said, I don't think anybody believes that just being good at jiu-jitsu is going to save you in every street component, you know. So
Right.
if we're getting a fight, I'm going to kill you might not be the case. You might get killed.
Yeah.
So, like, I think, yeah, it makes sense to get off of that a little bit. But I also think it makes sense for people to really sit down and think deeply about what your personal purpose
your
is.
personal, yes.
Yeah.
And feel like jiu-jitsu is what I call the art of adaptation. You're adapting to not only nature's rules, but whatever man-made rules are. And just by being able to adapt is like the essence of the art. And you can adapt your purpose. You don't have to retain this original goal. It's like that's adaptable. And the Taoist or even Hegelian route is realizing that everything is constantly adapting. It's not like, oh, once I adapt, I'll be there. There is no there. The there changes, and it's constant change. And then you go, oh, wow, I got to adapt. And then most of us at a certain point in our external world realize, fuck, I'm not adapting. I'm fighting this, or I'm looking to go back to the past, or I'm trying to alter the future. I'm not adapting to the now and flowing.
That's why I like to say the only constant is change.
That's a good
I
one,
really
yeah.
like that, you know.
Yeah.
'Cause, sometimes when some of us have issues when things change and we need to have time to adapt. We need a minute. And I identify as one of those people, right? But remembering that this is just everything's always in flux.
Yeah.
Always. There's
Always.
and nothing else is really as constant as change.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even in that philosophical sense, one says, okay, is change changing, or is change constant? And
I think it's constant.
we get ourselves stuck by thinking everything, because everything is change, we're also never there at times in the now, because it's going to change. And then you realize that there's kind of I hesitate to say, there's an unchangeable essence that is also changing.
I like thinking about the concept of entropy, right? So,
Yeah.
like our solar system, the the sun is burning, and eventually it will burn out.
Right.
And then the energy for the solar system will basically like
Yeah,
be
right.
gone. So everything is also, as it's changing, it's like depleting to nothing.
Yes. In
And
X
keeping that in mind.
billions of
Everything rolls
years,
down.
the universe will be dark. It's
Yeah.
been said, right? And
Not
And-
just the universe, but we ourselves
yes.
will die.
Yes. What is it in? I can't remember the number. I heard it the other day. In some billions of years, even if we have off-world colonies and all that, the universe will have heat death. But then I always think, like last night, Andy and I were thinking about, like, when you like scale is an interesting thing. When you go down to molecular level, then atomic level, subatomic, and then strings and quarks and all that, and a plank length at the smallest measurement we have, or we get really huge into the universe. For me, like just thinking that way and being an amateur sciencey geek, I won't even say scientist because that sounds so arrogant, but it really does get me right sized when I realize I am both totally significant and miraculous and all that I'm here, and I'm simultaneously a fly's life away from being in and out of this thing we call a consciousness, and then I want to hold on to it because it's short, and then I go, oh, I got to let go in order to have it, and it's this constant motion of what is the purpose, right? And for me, like I think I'm much more of an existentialist, although I appreciate the religious views. Is I don't think there is a point that I think we create our purpose. We create meaning in our lives, and sometimes we create that meaning through a religious story. Sometimes we create it through other narratives, but we ultimately are pattern recognition, biological. I hesitate to use the word machine because then we always think of mechanical, but we are meaning-seeking creatures. We seek meaning. And someone who's pure science, math, existentialist will try to not seek meaning. And that's an intent, which is meaning as well, right? And that brings me back that thing like, oh, it's all important. And it's also totally unimportant at the same fucking time.
I kind of think, though, that each one of us is born with certain inherent gifts, things that we like, things that we gravitate towards,
Yes.
things that we choose. And in a way, like purpose of life is something that is unfolding and that like I feel like I'm finding it rather than making it.
Right.
So it's not that much in my control
That's a
because
good
I'm
way to
not
look
that
at it.
powerful.
Yeah.
But that I'm discovering it by really discovering like who I am and how I came into the world. And yes, I can seek out certain things, but ultimately because I have an interest in it. And why do I have an interest in it? Because I was born
And that's your nature.
with a certain nature and nurture and parenting and all the different things that came into who I was. But so much of my life, I feel like, is out of my control. And I just show up and Tobin says, let's do a podcast. And here we are. You know what I mean? Like it's unfolding and I'm finding what I'm supposed to be doing, who I'm supposed to be, you know, and what I was born with a feeling like I want to be helpful to others. Maybe somebody else wasn't. They were into something else. So, you know, I put myself in roles where I can help other people because that's what feels like it's natural for me. That's next door.
Okay. That worried me.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the
Because
things
we have a new puppy, and I've often been like thinking about, because we also all have young kids, like the whole nature v nurture argument. Like I think anybody who has kids or multiple and puppies realize that you're definitely like just you're born with a personality type. There's like some aspects that you're born with, and other aspects comes with your conditioning, parent, society, culture, and all that, right? And when we confuse those, we get ourselves into trouble. When we're trying to force something that's natural, or trying to what's the inverse? Trying to claim something is natural when it's not. It's engineered, right? And it's knowing that, and like trying to train this new a puppy. I think a lot about like wondering what this puppy's siblings were like, what nature she got from her parents, her breed, all these aspects. That's the part that I can't control. And then the courage to change what I can, and then the wisdom to know that the difference. And that's like, I think one of the wisest little poems or lines ever written by somebody who's anonymous.
Well, and you were saying this morning that the first year of the puppy's training ultimately is like the most important. It's when she's the most adaptable,
Most adaptable.
and she's a
Yep.
sponge and she's picking everything up. And it's the same for us. The formative years of our lives as human beings, it's very impressionable, and it was totally out of our control
Yeah.
when we were little. And then we come and become adults, and like stuff that happened to us when we were like under 10 years old highly influences how we operate in the world. And to undo that is no easy feat, even if
No.
you have the wisdom to know the difference
Right.
and
There's
the
no
courage.
easy feat.
It's not easy to undo
Yes.
your programming from when you were a kid. It's
You're not-
that it's not
yeah.
it's not impossible, but it is a very
You don't like
difficult
think yourself
undertaking.
out of it and then go, oh, now I know, so I'm going to, yeah.
So I'm never going to act that way
Yeah.
again. I'm never going to have rage again, even though my dad had all this rage in my household. It doesn't just end, right? It's like a process, and you have to seek out a lot of help and therapy and
Yes.
support, and more than just jujitsu. I don't think jujitsu
Yeah.
cures all that stuff.
No. But it definitely helps.
Yeah, it can
Yep.
help.
Yeah, I kind of feel like one of the things that for me to feel purpose is I have to have a vision. And I feel like in jiu-jitsu specifically, from early on, I think I had a vision of what I was trying to get out of it. And I think to do anything, like, and I think a lot of this stuff, like society provides you a vision, like of what's right and what's wrong. Religion can provide you a
Yep.
vision of like
Your culture,
a pious life.
sure, your religion, your political ideology, your identity, like all these things. I always find people that say they have none of that seem to have it the worst, right?
Yeah, it's like you got to be aware that your idea of how the world works is being fed to you in a lot of ways.
Yep.
And it's not totally in your control. Like things are happening around you and you're just sensing them, and that's developing your idea of what's going on.
Well, that's like the old thing that you're the biggest predictor of what religion you will be in is what culture / what country you're born. Like your odds of being a Hindu when you're born in rural America are slim to none. Your odds of being a Catholic when you're born in a non-Catholic country are slim to none. It happens, but like when you just think about that, how much of our life is cultural conditioning, and it is not like not even the psychology, but the sociology. Us moving as groups, as a population, and I think we, especially in the West, we forget that we are part of a flock, a pack, a population, when we're so thinking we're these individuals and we're all just this collection of little individuals bouncing. Like that's true in one sense, but we also really are like a flock of birds that suddenly one bird skids and the other ones fly off, and then one thing pops up on our screen and a bunch of things gather over to that. And I think what Silicon Valley has done so well is recognize those patterns, and then AI recognizes them and feeds you your curated algorithm where you just fly there like one of the birds in the flock.
But I would argue that that's a spectrum, right? And that
Yeah.
maybe if you're born in a certain country where like women have to behave a certain way,
Wear a veil.
that's a lot more what you're saying, following being part of this
Yes.
flock. And we do have the freedom of individual expression.
Thank God.
A lot
Yeah.
more so here,
Yes.
even though we still, to some degree, are part of a culture,
Yes.
which I think is fine. And then there's subcultures. There's
Yes.
America, I think, has so many different cultures. Like
It
if
really
you go
does.
to every
Mhm.
different area, there's some things that are the same now with like the invention of the strip mall,
Right.
and with the corporations that take
Yep.
over everything
The
and
chain
shut all
stores,
chain
strip
stores
malls, yeah.
are. You can find
Yeah.
Target everywhere, right? You can find Starbucks everywhere. You got all your big brand stores. So that's the same, but at the same time, there's elements of culture that are very,
Yeah.
very different. Still,
I remember
right?
on one of my trips years ago, like almost decades ago, at least 15, I'm in this really cool like Southeast Asian country where there's old temples with monkeys on them. It's like,
You don't know
that's
which one? Cambodia?
no, it wasn't Cambodia. It was maybe Malaysia. And that's where I want to go. And my hosts and all that wanted to go to the mall, which is like the last place I want to be in is a fucking mall.
We did that in South Africa a lot too. Went to the
Yes.
mall, and we're in Africa.
Like, why am I in a mall? Yeah, we're in Africa. I want to pet baby lions. I don't want to, but like, it's interesting because like what, I guess like maybe, I mean, if I'm them, the mall is really cool. It's air conditioned. It's safe. There's
There's
no
lions.
you can buy. You can acquire material goods. We're squirrels who want to stow away nuts no matter what. And like our brains think that way because we are programmed as that. And with Jiu Jitsu, again, is very primal. Grappling arts and striking arts, but grappling is so primal that we can't, like I say, it seems like I do it now because I cannot not do it. Now, as I age, I realize that I will pass a phase where I can no longer do this at least the way I want to. And I have to adapt to knowing when that's coming, right? Or knowing that it is coming. And I feel like I've accepted that it will come now, where 5 years ago, even, like I wasn't sure if I was ready to accept that there will be a day where I can no longer roll. And when I use the word roll, you know, that's slap, bump, and go at it. Like that might come to an end sooner than I think.
Well, and just, you know, for reference, I think you have changed to where you train several days a week and you roll almost every time you teach.
Yep.
Teach here in LA, but you only do 3 to 4 rounds.
Yes.
And that like allows you to do it multiple days in a row.
Yes.
Whereas if you just came in here on Sunday and did 20 rounds and rolled with everybody, maybe you wouldn't be able to roll till the next Sunday.
Yeah.
Because I feel kind of like that's what I do is I'll just roll with everybody and then I feel horrible and then I can't. Like maybe I need to adopt the 3 to 4. If I ever get back to it, I need to adopt the 3 to 4 rounds.
I began to adopt that when I was in my mid to late 40s.
Really?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. I'm in my mid to late 40s.
That was like where I...
Schnikes. No wonder.
Like skiing, snowboarding, it's like quit before your last run. I remember like hearing that because it's the one more where you blow your knee out. Like quit before the last one. Not the last one. Quit one roll before the last one.
I feel like you need to change your modality from 3 rolls to a number of minutes. Because I've noticed what you end up doing is you'll roll with one person and then you'll just not stop. So
you don't hear the
you'll
timer.
either like
I'll
go
the
through rolls,
next round.
and so your 3 rolls, quote unquote,
is
ends
really
up being
6.
like 45 minutes of rolling straight.
I've thought of that, but so at the same time, I don't want it that controlled. I still want to have the spontaneity. And the way I used to love it before having a timer is you roll per length of song. And sometimes you slap bump and, oh shit, it's a long song. And other times it's a 3-minute one, or you say 2 songs, and then that could end up 20 minutes. It could end up 5 minutes.
I see.
Or we could have somebody change the timer like every couple rounds, like randomly.
There you go.
Yeah.
Somebody who knows how to do it, which the only person is me.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's really good to training wise to introduce a chaos so you're constantly having to adapt. Like one of what made a CrossFit so cool was it wasn't this structured thing where, you know, leg days Wednesday and this, that. It throws it around, which really pushes you into quicker growth, which is adaptation. And when you alter your environment, you adapt or perish. And that adaptation is the key, which is why take a good CrossFit athlete and they're fit in a wide range of things, from cardio to long distance to strength and all that. It's a very good way. And I can't remember the guy's name. Some CrossFit person will be, I can't believe you didn't know started CrossFit, but he was a Marine. All that it was a thing that how they used to train in, that came out in the 1970s in a boot camp to make Marines to have constant change, not so their structure, but then within that, just when you think, oh, we always go to lunch, like, nope, change it on you, and then like people wig out because it's changed, and then you got to learn how to adapt, knowing that change is constantly coming. And that's like I think that's like how I like to model a jiu-jitsu mat and a school. And then other times I think like, oh, it would be nice if every Wednesday night is guard night and we always do throws on Thursday, but it's also nice to, once people pick up a pattern, to switch it.
Huh. That's interesting and makes sense. I just wanted to ask, what is your vision of what you're going to be like in terms of jiu-jitsu when you can no longer roll? Like you were saying earlier, do you have an idea of like what that looks like for you when you can no longer roll?
Well, I do. Like, I would say my current mentor in this is Rickson. And like, people always ask me, but wow, does Rickson roll with you? And in a way, yes, he does. But what we do is isolation. He'll say, we'll roll just to where he opens my guard. Then we'll go back. And he's not going 100%, because if he does, he'll hurt himself. And we're flow, roll, isolating to get, just like, I'll learn so much just on whether I hold my wrist like this or this. And we'll isolate just that aspect of it. The grip stroke, redo that part. Broke the grip, redo that. Yes, now you got it, Chris. Yes, hold that. Yes, now connect. Right, like that has become something that to me is as fulfilling as rolling. And I think it is with Rickson as well, because Rickson is still developing the art. And that's kind of like the thing. Oh, always be developing the art. Always be looking for the most efficient way to micro adjust, I call it. Rather than just go, I'm going to do 100 arm bars as fast as I can. Let's see how slow I could do it.
What about beyond that, though? When you really, truly can't even do that, like you're so...
Yeah, God, I don't know. I mean, one of the things that I've thought about on and off for years is, let's just say for whatever reason, accident, whatever, I went blind. My first immediate thing is, I'm going to play piano. I'm going to learn to play a piano. I'm going to find...
You can still do jiu-jitsu. You're blind.
Right. But my point is, so what happens if suddenly I lose a jiu-jitsu? And I'm sure I could find something like play piano or some other thing that I don't have to use my hips, shoulders, and elbows for, that I can just use the tips of my fingers. There's got to be something.
Nice.
Should we have our intermission?
Intermish.
Yeah, I got to let this little pup
We have
in.
people crying.
Oh, little babies.
Intermish, and then let's close the topic
Where's the
and hit the
baby?
cues and get out of here.
Was that?
Please enjoy this short intermission. Thank you for watching and listening. We will be back shortly.
I guess just in summary, right? So purpose for jiu-jitsu. It sounds like it's important to have a vision as far as what you're trying to do with your jiu-jitsu. And that can be a vision as far as a person you're trying to become, community service that you want to fulfill. You have to have some sort of vision. and then you have to adapt as time goes on, right, to stay motivated and to have something to work towards. Those are two things that I'm noticing here from what everybody's saying.
I like it to say my purpose is to serve purpose.
Yeah, there you go. That makes sense. Well, there we go. Close out the topic.
Sick.
All right. Do you have a gym shout out, or do we
Yeah,
just
I
do
do
cues?
actually.
You
I
ready
wanted
for that?
to shout out our friends over in North Carolina. Our friends from Heritage Jiu Jitsu in Wake Forest, North Carolina, with the head coach Jeremy Laviano. You can experience the excellence of Heritage Jiu Jitsu, a premier martial arts academy specializing in no-gi Jiu Jitsu, submission grappling, wrestling, combat Jiu Jitsu, grappling for mixed martial arts, anti-bullying, and hand-to-hand self-defense. Their curriculum offers a clear, sequential method of study focused on developing high-quality movement patterns. They also have a unique approach which ensures mastery of fundamentals, paving the way for advanced self-defense, competition, or recreational practice. And you can find them in Wake Forest, where Chris will probably be going out to do another seminar this year.
I'm
and
sure
did
I
one
will
last
be.
year
Yep.
with Jeremy, who's a really nice guy.
We love
Talk
Jeremy.
to him often, and this
Ultra
is
heavyweight.
His invention, the combat cuff, which is like an anklet. So if you're in no-gi, and everybody has different opinions on this, but if you're doing no-gi,
You gotta lift that leg up.
and you're
There you go.
there's
A little
the
lower.
leg.
Little
If
lower.
you want some rank,
Right there.
If you're running a school that primarily does no-gi, you're running a kids program, and you're thinking about a belting system, and you consider that you do jiu-jitsu, I think it's not a bad idea to use something to mark that.
Yep.
And I think having a belt when you're doing no-gi is strange.
yes,
Like a belt that
wrapping
you wrap
a belt
your
around
waist.
you. Yes,
But if you're doing a ranking system, something like the combat cuff would be
an ideal.
an
system.
ideal replacement for that. I mean,
Yeah.
some people do rash guards when they do
Mhm.
no-gi colored rash guards, but I think this is really cool because it looks like a jiu-jitsu belt.
Yep, it's
And
clearly
even if you're
jiu-jitsu,
not
yep.
into that, they're kind of cool that you can just, if you're, say you do gi jiu-jitsu and you just want to hang it on your backpack or
Yeah.
do something like that as a little trinket, you can find these at combatcuff.com.
That's dope. I feel like I'd look at that and I want to wrap up some extension cords and wrap that around it.
Yeah, you can have, you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu and you want to have 30 of these
Yeah.
lying around your house just for any purpose. It's got a nice Velcro, and you
Gotta
can
let
put
the guys on
stripes on it to mark your stripes. It's
Useful
kind of like
to organize lines.
if people
Yeah,
were,
there you go.
I think someone, maybe it was OTM, made the belt that looked like
Yes.
a jiu-jitsu belt.
On the trunks, on the
Well, no, they
no-gi
have it on the trunks,
have
but
it,
they
yeah.
also just had like a regular belt that was made out of this material that you could use on your jeans.
Oh yes,
You
yes,
remember
yeah,
that?
yep.
And then the
Mhm.
idea of having the sandals with
Yes.
the belt thing, I think you were
I've had
working
that
on
idea for years.
So
Yep.
there's lots of different ideas of cool little things that people
Mhm.
can use, that grapplers can use, And another thing grapplers use a lot of is soap.
Yes, they
And
do.
guess what? Chris Haueter, this guy,
It is
made
true.
a bunch of soap.
Combat-based soap.
We have combat-based soap at combatbase.com.
Those who've known me for over 20 years know that I'm a huge fan of the book and movie Fight Club, and I like the whole story, making the soap and all that. And I've always wanted to make my own bars of combat-based soap.
Pink soap. We should
And-
have our bars. We can bring them next time.
And I
Show 'em.
I've searched for ways to do it. I've asked people to try to come up. I even hired a guy to make me a mold, and he never came through. I was going to make it myself. And finally, I found through Etsy a person that was willing to make my molds, and I am now making soap. And it is awesome soap.
Chris the soap maker.
Yes.
It's pink
Pink.
Fight Club
And
combat-based soap.
the large bar is like an actual calculated, researched, perfect size to where it wears down, where you could still use it as a bar. Because a lot of times when they're real small bars, it becomes this thing that you can't hold. When they're too big, the surface area of the water that creates the suds ratio is off. This is calculated as the perfect for a bar size of soap.
And what's the small bar for?
The small bar's travel.
Okay, so yeah, we have a large bar and a small bar. They're like $10 and $8. Combatbase.com. Check it out.
Check it out.
Check out the soap.
It's cool.
Dope.
Dope soap.
Dope soap. All right, let's hit some cues here. We got some people hitting us on the email. So remember, if you want to hit the hotline, 949-791-7763. You can also email us, podcast@combatbase.com. So we got some cool emails. The first one is, did any of you experience the pressure to conform to unhealthy lifestyle choices coming up in jiu-jitsu, such as eating excessive amounts of junk food or drinking alcohol by people within your immediate family/in-laws?
What?
If so, how did you overcome that, or is it still an ongoing fight to stay true to your identity and lifestyle? I like that this person has a vision as far as identity and lifestyle that they're working towards with their jiu-jitsu. So they have a purpose clearly in their mind about what they're trying to do and what their practice does for them.
This question is asking, how do you not eat excessive amounts of junk food and drink alcohol?
Or how do you
Because
keep
your
doing
family-
it in jiu-jitsu?
Because your family does and you don't want to do that?
I think the question is, how do you manage the relationship with family and people that are close with you?
When
That
you
aren't
feel
healthy.
that
When you
their
feel the
lifestyle is
pressure.
unhealthy.
And we're so healthy because we do jiu-jitsu, because I think a lot of jiu-jitsu people drink excessive amounts of alcohol
Yes.
and eat junk food,
They do.
including Chris. He doesn't drink alcohol anymore, but he
I
eats
eat
Lucky
stuff that
Charms
most
and
people would
chocolate
say
and
are
fat
unhealthy.
burger
Yeah.
and wiener schnitzel and like
Oscar
all this
Myers.
crap that's horrible. Oscar Meyer wiener, the wiener. Yeah, he eats a lot of stuff.
I do anybody who eats healthy and is on that wing of the spectrum would definitely view me as an unhealthy eater. But people that eat really unhealthy see me as, because I will eat my broccoli. I will go out of my way to eat healthy things. I take my fiber. Like I'm not a complete bag of shit, but there was a study that I remember, a college Greco-Roman wrestler who's a champion, like was partially in it, and they found out that one of the perfect things to eat after spending a bunch of calories is a cheeseburger, because you get your salt, your pickles to stop the cramping, you get your fats, your protein, and your carbs. It's like the perfect replenishment. Now, is that a skewed study done to sell cheeseburgers? Possibly.
An old study,
So I don't
maybe,
know.
perhaps.
An
Could
old
it be an
one?
old study?
It's
Because
at
we
least
used to
15
think
years ago.
smoking
Yeah.
cigarettes is really good for you, especially
Yes.
if you're pregnant. I mean, come on.
Yeah, 4 out of 5 OBGYNs recommend Winston as the
Or
brand.
no, Virginia Slims.
Virginia
That's a more
Slims, yep.
female marketed cigarette.
Yep.
But I mean, I also think it depends on the body, right? So Chris functions well on a high carb diet, and
Yeah.
he can eat processed foods.
Yeah.
I have a kidney thing. Only one works. If I eat the way that Chris eats, and I've never been able to eat the way Chris
No.
eats. If I eat the way Chris eats, I blow up
You
and I
blow
weigh
up.
as much as he does.
You do. You blow
So
up.
I have to eat differently. Not that there's anything wrong with having more
Mm-hmm.
weight on a person. It just doesn't feel good on my frame. My body hurts. My head
Yep.
hurts. Things don't feel good for me. So my system requires me to eat a little bit more of a healthy, less processed, less refined
Yep.
diet. Less sodium, even less protein when you have a kidney issue.
Yeah.
And drinking, like, that's a whole nother can of worms, because I've not drank for almost 23 years, and being in a world of drinkers is a thing that, you know, how do you not engage? And I think you have to learn, if you want to be a non-drinker or a non-consumer of processed foods, it's about like training yourself to have
yes.
responses when you get in that situation where you're with everybody and they want you to do something, and you know that your body is not going to function well if you partake. Then you have to kind of develop skills, and sometimes maybe you will partake and then you'll regret it. And it's like kind of like trial and error.
You'll
in
learn
some
the
ways.
hard way for sure.
Yeah.
It's not like you're just going to make up your mind and go, I'm going to be healthy now. You'll make mistakes and you'll fuck up. And for some people out there, they can definitely moderately drink, or even what I would call heavy, but they seem to have zero negative impact on their life. If anything, a positive impact. They socialize and all this stuff, and that's totally fine too.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong, I don't think, if you're around a bunch of people and you have like a cheat meal, right? Like, or
Yep.
whatever. It's just, what are you doing like 90% of the time?
Yeah.
Are you drinking alcohol and eating junk food 90% of the time?
That's probably
the
too much.
10%
Yep.
isn't the part that is gonna mess up, your jujitsu, your
Yep.
healthy lifestyle that you're leading. It's the 90%.
It sounds to me like the question this person has is how to set boundaries with people and to have personal boundaries, so that when you're with your in-laws or your family that are doing something you don't like, how do you like what things how do you confidently say no to whatever? Or
I think everybody has their own ways, and maybe this is because I'm an a drinker, but I find that my ears tune up if I hear a person is not a drinking. Then it makes me, like when I used to drink, it would bug me. It's like, who the fuck isn't drinking? Like, I think just not saying anything is the smarter route. When I'm offered alcohol, just like, no, not right now. Rather than explaining how I'm an ex-problem. I try to avoid that conversation for the most part. But for other people, that's their route, is to point out distinctly why they don't. And that might help other people hear, maybe I shouldn't either. So it's kind of both.
It's also just, I've definitely experienced that too, like where there's been, like, I don't really drink, and I've said to people like, oh, I don't drink. And then it becomes this weird thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Whereas like,
It can
if you just
ruin
go,
the mood
No,
really
thank you.
quickly. Yeah.
well, I'm not in the mood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't feel like doing that right now or whatever. That's fine.
Yeah,
And
or
then
I'm good with this, and you have water. Like,
Yeah.
that's one of the things, is like, there's all these different strategies, but like always having something in your hand. I've got my drink, right?
I see.
I have my drink already. I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need
Yeah.
anything else because
Yeah.
I have a drink. Or
Yeah.
I already ate. I like my grandma. She's a food pusher.
She is a pusher.
She'll be like, "Can you just eat this box of ice cream bars for me? Because I don't want to have to throw it out." I'm like, "Grandma, no." But when I first stopped drinking, I found that I had to avoid certain situations and always have an exit plan.
Yeah.
Like, I don't ride with somebody else. I need to have my own car, so that if I feel uncomfortable and I need to leave, I feel like committing to a healthy lifestyle, if it's something that's really dangerous, like for me, it was really dangerous, I need to be willing to leave the situation and remove myself. And that's that's the ultimate boundary.
And not worry about offending people.
Right, because it's
doing
self-care.
So. Self-care.
I'm taking care of myself, and ultimately at the end of the day, I have to put myself first because no one else is going to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like your ultimate duty is to care for yourself.
Correct.
And then everything else comes after that. Yeah.
Yes.
Put
That
your
makes
own
sense.
oxygen mask on first.
Yeah. And
That's
I think
correct.
if to offer some sort of like, something to look into, I think just practicing boundary setting in general, I think is probably what this person needs to do.
Probably.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. This is another really cool one. I'm stoked to get this cue, and this will be the last cue du jour. Good day, Mr. Chris Haueter. Wishing you a happy new year. Can you please help me with a case study I'm working on? And I will be honored to seek your expert opinion on this statement. 90 to 95% of street fights end up on the ground. I'm sure you have heard of these stats as an OG of the prestigious martial art of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Do you think this is factual or not? And do you have evidence that supports your opinion? I'm a student of Gracie Jiu Jitsu, humbly seeking your knowledge. Take care, sir. Greetings from Nigeria, West Africa.
Nice.
All right.
What's up, West Africa?
I'm going to say that, like everything, that I would say, it is both true and not at the same time. So that statement, when I hear that, I picture hearing Horion's voice. And Horion is a most excellent marketer. Like, I can picture hearing him say, and Gracie Jiu Jitsu, because 90% of all fights will end up on the ground. And is that true? Yes and no. So again, here we have personality types, training backgrounds, and obviously early MMA was experiments of style against a style. And unless you were knocked out on your way into the clinch, eventually the fight goes to a clinch. Then it ends up on the ground. Now, in old boxing, before like 1960s, clinching was a huge aspect of boxing. And it was a whole art. And there were boxers that, in essence, specialized on the clinch. Usually guys who didn't have a long reach and all that stuff, they get in the clinch. The guy's trying to back up. They keep him in the corner or on the ropes, and they win via clinch. So clinch is like the bridge between striking distance, long reach, and grappling over here. You've got this thing called the clinch. So it's important to keep that in mind when you say something like 90% of all fights end up on the ground. I don't know where people got these statistics. I don't know if it's their own anecdotal personal experience growing up. In my experience, unless somebody got punched in the face hard enough, eventually the fight would end up in a clinch. And if the fight wasn't stopped in that clinch, or a person knocked out from the clinch, it would end up on the ground. Now, I don't know what the percentage is. To me, that doesn't even matter. That's why I have my threes. You have to have striking, clinch, and ground. It's like if you could only choose one, you could only pick one. I used to say ground, but I often say clinch is actually like, because that's the bridge. And really good grapplers who don't know anything about how to clinch or punch have a hard time bringing people onto the ground. Really good clinchers are very hard to take down to the ground. And so in early MMA, that phase where Greco-Roman, which is the art of the clinch without punches, once they adapted to the strikes and a touch of grappling, became like a real important aspect of MMA. So to think of street, if you want to do a pure judo style, I think it's lacking. But there are elements of judo in there that are so important. If you want to do a pure sport jiu-jitsu style, I think it's lacking. But there are elements in there that are key. If you want to learn how to box or kickbox exclusively, that's awesome. But there are elements that it lacks utility in an actual street confrontation. Because, again, the course of it is there's long range, clinch, and ground. And it's how fast that happens, or if the fight ends before it happens.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
So if you're in a clinch, how does the fight end?
By strikes. Knees, elbows.
Oh, so in a clinch, hitting each other.
Or a big throw that ends it before it ends up a grappling match.
Okay.
In judo, the reason why you win with one throw, if it's a controlled throw, because technically, if you are on hard ground, that ends by the fight. Or if they pick you up, body slam.
I'm just imagining two people in a clinch. It's just where you're holding each other.
A clinch is grappling while standing.
Yes, but how are you getting enough force to knock somebody out from that position?
Well, uppercuts are very
powerful. So that happens
powerful.
often, like in MMA. I'm not like an MMA person.
It happens, yes. People get knocked out from either getting clinched or exiting the clinch. There's a very common part where you get hit very hard because they're accurate, they're short.
And you would say more common than from ground and pound on the ground, or?
I would think it's the key of all mixed combat. Clinch is the key ingredient. But clinchers are comfortable standing and comfortable on the ground. Grapplers are comfortable on the ground, not so much standing. Strike only are comfortable standing, not so much on the ground. It's you find that comfort zone in the clinch.
Can I throw my current thoughts on this?
Always.
My thoughts these days are, okay, so say the fights do end up on the ground. Is it your best effort to become a master of tangling someone up into a knot on the ground and then submitting them, which is jiu-jitsu?
Or avoiding going to the ground.
Or just learning how to do, if you ended up getting mounted, trap and roll, stand up and get out. If you end up getting headlocked, Tonio Tosh situation, put the guy on the ground, stand up, get out. Like, I don't think someone's going to be a non-expert grappler is going to hold you in side control on the ground. You're going to stand up. So it's almost like you should know enough grappling to be able to stand up if it ends up on the ground. And you should know enough striking to be able to KO somebody if given the opportunity. And you should know some throws to be able to throw somebody if you clinch.
And you realize it's a can of worms. There is no easy answer. And one of my black belts, we were cops together. I used to bring the guy in here who's a cop, and I would say, okay, I'm going to pretend I'm drunk. I won't hit you, but I'm going to resist arrest, grab the cuffs, and I would end up arresting them, right? And then say, okay, I got to learn this. But I'm like, one of the cops, because of altercation experience on the street, which often includes multiple opponents and always a gun, yours, is that his goal was to, no matter what, have no one be able to hold him down on the ground. So most of the time for about 2 years when we trained, me, him, and others, is his entire goal was to be able to get back onto his feet. Because the hardest people to escape from is a grappler once they have you on the ground. And if you practice the art of being able to get back to your feet, and your grappling style is such that you feel like at any time I could stand up again. And so when I train, a lot of times, whether I'm in a guard or passing guard, in a clincher, whatever, I want to feel comfortable, like if I want, I can stand up. And I'll often go, I'm going to stand up. Nothing's holding me down. And I pop up. Whether you're on top, on my back, whatever it is, if I can, I'm going to stand. And it's not necessary for that fight, it's important. But for the overall thing, for my street art sport, I want to feel like I could go into any range whenever I want to. If I want this on the ground, I'm going to bring it to the ground. If I want to stand back up, I'm going to stand up. And modern MMA, with either aware or just the environment in which it's in, the guys who are very good at MMA can stand up when they want to. That's like an important skill. And stand up with the least amount of chances of being submitted or hit hard as they are standing up. And that is a crucial skill to have for street altercations.
I agree. That's my conclusion that's what I've been thinking lately.
And none of that is specific to any one of the combat sports. The one that has it the closest is collegiate wrestling, being able to get back up to your feet and get the takedown, right? That's like the art of be the guy on motherfucking back arching top, no matter back arching motherfucking what. And that's like why it has the strongest work ethic of all of the arts. Because any of us who grapple know it's hard to stand back up when you're grappling, because people are trying to keep you onto the ground.
Yeah, and if you're a regular guy with a balanced life that doesn't have the bandwidth to partake in collegiate wrestling, practicing jiu-jitsu with a think street component,
with the mindset,
thinking about standing up is a great way to develop that.
It's like on your next class, when the instructional phase is over and you're rolling around, just while rolling, have an idea that, I'm going to stand up right now, and see if you can. Like, it would be a cool thing to have a random bell when it went ding or dong. When it goes ding, half the room has to stand up. When it goes dong, the other half. So if it's the other half, I'm grappling and I hear ding, I'm going to feel my opponent try to get up, and I'm going to keep him the fuck down. If I hear dong, I'm trying to get up, right? That would be a good training method to incorporate it into your class.
Nice. Cool, guys.
Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I think we're good
Let's wrap
for
it.
today. This camera is screwed up, the group camera. So why
That's
don't you do a final see you in cyberspace or pound like and subscribe, whatever you feel like doing.
Where are you going to do it at?
That camera's looking at me.
Yeah.
Hit the button, pound, like, and subscribe. Out.
All right, guys. Thanks.
I snuck out.
Well, we all have targets on our backs these